at the end of the day, I think one big message for everybody is to try to work in your mindfulness, meaning that try to see how you're breathing, try to feel what is tight, what is not tight, try to really be, there's so many benefits on that. For instance, if I am shadow boxing and I'm doing, like you're saying, like I'm overextending my arm and then I can really focus in, maybe when I turn my hand, I feel a little bit of this little pain here and I move this other way. And it's almost I'm trying to really feel what is happening.
Yep.
I'm trying to feel how I'm gliding through the floor with my feet instead of long steps, trying to be mindful, because not only that will help you warm up, but also will disconnect you from the outside. Welcome back to the Core Combatives podcast. I'm Luigi Mondelli. I'm here with my mentor, my teacher, Shihan Walt Lysak. Thank you very much for all of you guys following us, sending your comments, giving us some feedback. We really appreciate that. We really need, so we can see how we're going to keep developing the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button. Send your comments, send by email, or if you can, just leave a review, especially if you're listening this through any podcast outlets such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Share with your friends and especially with your teammates, because there are so many good things that we have been talking here. Right now, we have been covering the BJJ Daily Dozen, those mindset principles that I think every competitor, and I think like it helps in even other areas, not just jiu-jitsu. This is for any type of competition or even type of almost like any training, hard training, and etc. So we have been covering those. Shihan today will cover warm-up and conditioning. He's going to talk more about that. Also, we're going to have our preparedness principles. We're going to have the RMA Warrior Principles, the reality martial arts warrior principles. We are introducing the book of the week, so we're going to try to present you guys with some ideas of books. So pretty much, Shihan reads way more than me, but you guys are going to see that my reading goal is all over. And then we're going to have the quote of the week. And again, thanks so much. I appreciate you guys being here. And thanks so much, Shihan Walt Lysak.
Thank you, Professor. Glad to be here. And you want to jump right into the Daily Dozen today? We'll start there first?
Let's do it. Just so people know, we have been covering these aspects. We're going to talk about, training when it comes to combatives. We're going to talk more about how the RMA training is. And this is just give you an ideas of how to do, maybe to organize your self-defense training. So the podcast is going to cover so many things. Right now we're covering the BJJ Daily Dozen, but this is going to expand. We're going to talk we are preparing to talk about Russia and Ukraine, how this can affect us, or how this will affect us, or has been affecting us. We're going to talk about so many things. So stay tuned. So let's start, Shihan.
Yeah, absolutely. So just do a quick review here of the Daily Dozen. We have that overview, which is, first of all, we have the 3 Ps, which are the pre, present, and post. Again, pre is what happens before the competition. Present is what happens while you're at the competition or during the competition. And post is what happens after the competition, and how those 3 aspects, those 3 phases are very important to you as a competitor. Okay, and this applies to other things, not just competition, but in any form of competition, this would be relevant, but also in other aspects of life as well. It's very important to think in terms of the 3 Ps, pre, present, and post. We even do that in our RMA and self-defense process of preparing ourselves to be warriors. So the 12, and then there's 12 elements within the 3 phases. And the first element is the mental and emotional aspects of preparation. The second is the coach, we call the coach connection. The third we covered already was called the professional and practical matters. The fourth was dealt with training partners and trainers. Today we'll be talking about conditioning, which involves warm-ups and training and workout plans and journaling and so on and so forth. In the future, we'll also be covering nutrition and hydration. Also, the technical and strategic development. We'll be covering rest and rehab. We'll be covering drills for skills. We'll be talking about rolling and sparring. We'll be talking about researching every aspect of the sport or whatever you're involved in, whatever you're preparing for. And we'll also talk about the importance of replicating the competition dynamic as much as possible. So that's what we have to look forward. Some of the things we have to look forward to in the future. And today, what we'll be covering today will be the conditioning aspects. So here in my notes, just gonna conditioning warm-ups. Again, we're going to be talking about warm-ups, training, workout plans, and journaling. Okay. Obviously, when it comes to warm-up, it's pretty simple. Just kind of obviously get your body warm, do some sort of an exercise, something that kind of prepares your body, gets it warm, creates a sweat, and then you want to work on suppleness. I feel it's important personally, regardless if someone wants to use the term if they're doing range of motion skills or if they're doing combat-specific stretching or more formal types of stretching, whatever the case might be. I feel it's important that your body is supple. A lot of times, stretching in the morning, you're tightest. If you want to prepare yourself, you want to stretch or do suppleness or warm up type exercises before workouts. And after a workout is a good time to improve your range of motion, improve your flexibility. And that one of the best times, according to Grandmaster Bill Superfoot Wallace, actually just is one of my instructors I'm a black belt under, and also someone I just got to work with a few weeks ago again. But he always stresses the importance that before you go to bed at night, you've done all your lifting and carrying and walking up and down stairs. Before you go to bed, spend that little time even before you go to bed working on your flexibility, working on your stretching to increase your range of motion. So that just gives you some ideas, but also make sure that your warm-ups are kind of relevant to what you're doing. Obviously if you're boxing, there's certain movements. So I'll do things like I'll actually do the range of motion of the punch and really feel my shoulder and back and all that up. It doesn't have to be fast. It can be nice and slow, and then kind of hold the positions and feel if you find any tight spots in your body. If you're doing jiu-jitsu and you're going for an armbar, you can go through the movements, go through the arm bars, do your rock and rolls, do your shrimping, do your movements, and kind of listen to your body, so to speak, but you're really feeling what your body's telling you. But listen to your body, and if you feel something's a little tight here, your lower back, your legs, your hamstrings, that allows you to kind of like be more specific and kind of figure out exactly what you need to work on or what area maybe needs a little more focus than others. So make sure you spend that proper amount of time preparing yourself before a workout, because this can help you avoid injuries and also can increase your range of motion so that maybe you're not going to be as uncomfortable in certain positions, or maybe even willing to submit with certain submissions. Even just having good range of motion can allow you to last a little longer. So maybe that you're able, maybe the clock sounds and you were ahead on points and you don't get submitted, or maybe you're just able to work your way out of the submission. So in other words, anyways, warm up is a very important part of a workout, and make sure you don't rush past that time, okay, to prepare your body properly for training, and make sure you appropriate the type of preparedness, whether it's stretching or other types of methods, different type of warm up exercises to whatever you're doing. Make sure it fits what you're doing and it lines up with the type of training you're doing. So anyway, when it comes to our conditioning, again, it involves it's very important that you're in the very best shape possible when you get to the tournament. So if we're appropriating this to a BJJ competition or BJJ Daily Dozen, you want to be in the best shape you possibly can be when you get to that tournament. When you decide you do want to compete, you've basically just decided to bump up your regular training regimen to another level. So if you're training here and you're gonna do a competition, you got to be bumping that up a level 2 or 3 from what you normally do. You got to make a commitment, and that involves maybe not doing certain other things you usually do, not going certain other places you usually go. You're going to have to make some sacrifices. You're going to have to let people know, look, I made a commitment to do this tournament. I want to do my best. I'm not going to do it just to do it. I'm going to do it to bring my very best to that competition. I want to be in the best shape possible. So I love this saying, and it's not the quote of the week, but I love this saying. I believe it was Tony Robbins that said that you are the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time around. You are the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time around. And that's so important, because if we start allowing ourselves to hang around with people that are just always sitting around, never doing anything, never walking, never running, never lifting, never exercising, never rolling, never doing bag work, nothing. They're just doing nothing. Watching goofy TV shows or things that are kind of useless and don't contribute anything to your intellect or to your growth, whether it be psychologically, emotionally, physically, whatever, that's not going to help you grow. So you need to align yourself with people that are doing things that allow you to see how can that that thing that they're doing, that thing that I'm doing with them, contribute to making me the warrior I want to be, or the champion that I want to be. So that's very important. So be sure to create a schedule. You have to create a schedule that factors in all the necessary areas of training. Don't just think you're going to jam it in during a day, because if you don't plan, when you fail to plan, you plan to fail to plan, you plan to fail, or something like that. So you want to make sure that you plan things out in advance. Plan out your schedule and have a understanding. Okay, this is where I would do my cardio. This is where I do my weight training. And you're going to hit little landmines. Certain things are going to pop up that you don't expect. Oh, so-and-so got sick, or you got to go to the hospital because there's things that can happen like that. But try to make sure that you even factor some of those things in, so that there's, as much as possible, you're going to be able to always make sure that routine is done when it needs to be done. That whether it be planning your food on certain days, or your nutrition, all those things. This is very important. This is also where another thing we're going to talk about in a minute, which is journaling, comes into play too. That's very important. So plan out your workouts, plan out your schedule as much as possible. Of course, conditioning that comes from more sports-specific training is of the utmost importance. In other words, doing things that are like when you're actually grappling or doing ground mobility type exercises that actually replicate the exact motion and movements that you're going to be doing when you're grappling, or actually rolling with somebody, or drilling, or practicing tactics or skills, is probably the best type of conditioning, because it's specific to the actual sport, and it's what you're going to be doing when you go out on the mats, versus like lifting weights is not combat specific. You're not going to go out on the mat and just start lifting dumbbells and start doing deadlifts and things like that. However, you have to remember that you won't always have people available. So I don't agree with people that say never to do stuff that's not combat specific. I think these are supplementary type of training, and they're necessary. You should do them. They should be part of your routine anyway, just for general health and fitness and so on and so forth. But you may have to, in some cases, up those even up a level, because you're not always going to have, like, say, access to other people and training partners and so on and so forth. So certainly going to the gym, whether you're running, riding a bike, lifting weights properly, thinking of how that relates to maybe escaping an armbar, or lifting someone, or different things you need to develop your grip strength and things like that are relevant to grappling. You can do weight training, cardiovascular training, and things like that to develop your core, your back, your arms, your legs, your neck, your grip strength, which is, I think, very important in grappling. To make you a better competitor. So even though combat specific would be probably the most important type of conditioning, don't rule out the other types of conditionings. I mean, you can have things in your car, like carry some putty or a rubber ball or gripper, and you're working your hands or working on your steering wheel. Any way you can kind of think of how you can maximize your time, that no matter where you are, you're able to do something that's going to contribute to making you a champion. So that's very valuable. In fact, I remember one of my good friends, Frank Shamrock, he used to come out here for seminars and train years ago, and I was in the corner with Maury Smith, and he was in the corner with Maury Smith along with Kirk Jensen and my brother Charlie when Maury Smith won the UFC heavyweight title at UFC 14. And I always remember one thing stuck in my head that Frank Shamrock would say. He never really claimed and this is when he was at his best, and he really was kind of beating everybody. After that, he had several injuries I know of personally that really was why I think it made it hard for him to continue to the same level of success he had. But when he was at his best and, really healthy and so on and so forth, he would always say that he would say, my conditioning is my best submission. In other words, the level of fitness and conditioning, he goes, that's my best submission. And not that he said that he didn't think other submissions were important, but that was, for him personally, what he looked at as his best submission, because he had the ability to go and go and go and go. And even if it was kind of close with a person as far as the jiu-jitsu was concerned, they would get tired and couldn't keep up with his pace, and then he could kind of impose his will on them to be more successful when he competed. So and I think that's very important, is that just thinking that my conditioning is my best submission. I love that.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and many people will have to mix their time. So you're going to have to mix your time sometimes between, BJJ rolling and technique development and drilling, building conditioning, researching, studying different fights. Maybe if you have footage on people in the division you're competing in, or if you know something specifically about the person you may be competing against, or just in general, watching different, like if you're competing in IBJJF, or you're competing Gaman, or you're competing this is basically the same kind of rules, or Naga, or whatever the case may be, watch some fights from those events and watch the people in that division, give you some understanding of where they're at, and what you may have to deal with and face. So all this goes into your development when you're training and conditioning. And again, A lot of this can come down to what works for you as far as how you appropriate your time in training. Like for example, you may have certain areas in your body that are injured or a little weak, and you may have to do a little less of that and focus more on rehabbing that part of the body, and you're able to do more of this or this or this because it doesn't tend to affect or hurt that body. And what you don't want to do is agitate an injury that you may already have before a competition by pushing that part of the body over and over and over again, so that when you go to the tournament, you've done so much damage that you're worse off than you were when you started your preparation for the competition. One thing I want to stress is that there's great champions in every sport, every combative sport there is, and every other sport there is, who have various ways of becoming great. So you see all different methodologies and practices. That's one thing that really bugs me, is that when you see someone will say, well, the way that guy's doing is wrong. Renzo does it this way. I don't like how Renzo does it. I like it how Salo does it, or Salo does it this way, and I like how Professor Luigi does it. Look, all these guys are champions, and all of them are great, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if you're talking about Renzo Gracie, if you're talking about John Danaher, if you're talking about Professor Luigi, if you're talking about Roger Gracie, if you're talking about Andre Galval, they're all phenomenal. And if you train with any of them and you put the right time in, you're going to get really good working with these guys. So, and they may have little different ways of doing things, and that's okay. There's more than one way to be effective. There's more than one way to win. There's more than one way to become great. So there's not only one way. And I always stress, even with what I'm telling you today, this is not necessarily the way. It's just simply a way. And I know that the information I'm giving you will help you and will definitely make you better and improve you. But it's not. You don't have to follow it exactly or say, well, I'm not going to do exactly that. I'd rather do this little part. Well, look, maybe you'll take 30% of what I tell you, and it'll help you a lot. Great. I'm happy that it made a difference. But you like to do some of the other stuff differently. That's fine. This isn't the way. It's simply a way. And just keep that in mind. And a lot of people, I stressed that before, will jump from school to school to school to school, not realizing that oftentimes a quality instructor knows what they're doing, but maybe they're trying to work little habits out of you, or attitudes out of you, or something out of you, or add certain things into you before they take you to another level, and you're in such a rush to get there that you never give them the time. So you jump from this instructor to that instructor, and before you even know what you're doing yourself, you've already predetermined in your mind that, quote unquote, they don't know what they're doing, when they oftentimes really do. You just haven't been patient enough to get through the process to get to be an excellent practitioner. So that's very important. I also love doing like resistance drills that replicate grappling type moves and scenarios, whether it be with weights and doing dumbbells, whether it's like I'm doing like hammer curls or certain actions that with a dumbbell that actually kind of replicates like I'm in that position, and also doing that with an opponent. I remember years ago at a lot of the competitions and stuff, working with a lot of the other high level guys in competition, promoters and people like that. And I would always do stuff where I wouldn't just do the prevention of the submission or the defense like early stages. I would do stuff really late stages where you're like, so the guy's got the choke and you go. And you may get caught a few times out of like maybe 5 out of 10 times, but eventually it happens less and less, and you're able to work your way out of those deep. Now, how do you defend a perfect submission? You don't. If it's perfect, it works.
Yeah.
But if you can make it just a little imperfect, it's possible to defend. So if a perfect technique is 90% right, then it's 10% wrong. And if I can bring it from 10% wrong to 20%, there's little by little, maybe I can break that technique down and defend it. Now, if it's 100% right, if it's perfect, it works. So you can't defend a perfect submission, but you can defend an imperfect submission. And what I look at it like this is, if there's 10 components that make a submission perfect, and I eliminate 3 of those, it's only 70% right. And if it's not 70%, if it's 70% right, it's not perfect. So there's a chance, and the more I reduce those elements, break down those elements, reverse manufacture the perfect choke, so to speak, the better chances I have of escaping. So it's important sometimes, put yourself, and you got to do this with a person that's intelligent. It's not going to take your arm and snap it when you're trying to do it, or just slam the choke. It gives you a chance to feel and think your way out of deep, late stage submissions. And I would do that a lot. Now it's the big thing. Now I hear like Gordon Ryan just was something I seen where he was stressing like how most people don't spend a lot of time on late stage defense and things like that, how crucial that is and how important that is. And I mean, I've got literally videos from 30 years ago was saying the exact same thing. So it's and not to disagree with him, he's totally 100% right, and he wasn't maybe even alive then, so I get it. But I'm just saying, here's one of the best guys on the planet competition wise saying the exact same thing. This is important. Put yourself in those positions. And here's the thing, if you're in a competition and you get caught in a move and it's just like one of those moves that made you feel helpless, bounce around the room with your good guys and say, put me in that position, and let's get 60% and 70 and see how close you can come to almost where they have it all, and then try to work your way out of it little by little. Start maybe a little like with part of the elements, and then more and more and more and more. And eventually, if you've done this you invested a lot of time in this. They may catch you with something in the future, but there's a much greater chance they're not going to catch you with that in the future. So put yourself in those oddball, uncomfortable positions. That's where the journaling, I'm going to bring that concept up again of journaling. Journaling is so important. If you're rolling and you get caught with certain moves and over and over again, journal it. If you see, I got caught with this 20 times on this day, 10 times on this day, 30, there's a problem there. I mean, you should be aware there is a serious problem there, and you need to fix that. You need to do some homework. You go to your coach connection, go to your training partners and trainers, do some research, whatever you got to do, figure out why you're getting caught with that and put yourself in that position instead of starting always on your feet and doing the stuff you're strong with, your double legs, your takedowns, your guard passing, your butt scooting, whatever the case might be. Put yourself in that lousy position that the guy caught you with and tapped you with in competition or in training, and work on it so it doesn't happen in the future. And so a lot of people don't focus on those worst memories they have in competition, but some of those worst memories are your best memories because they allow you to see something that you're weak at and that you can work on and improve. So that's what I want to stress this. So the last little closing point here is be sure to, again, carefully daily journal the highs and lows of your training. What you do good, hey, I caught so-and-so with a heel hook, that you're going to start to see a certain consistency of, man, I catch a lot of guys with heel hooks, or I catch a lot of guys with arm bars or triangle chokes or arm triangles. And you're going to kind of know what your sort of, my coach Grandmaster Joe Lewis would call it, your kill move is. Everybody should have a move that they know when I usually get someone in this move, you're done. That's it. I mean, and my dad always said that. He goes, I'd rather have 5 moves that I'm great at, absolutely phenomenal, than 50 ones that are weak and useless. So It's not always quantity, it's quality. So you're going to figure out by journaling what your kill move is, what your move that you're just, when you get someone and there's just a very low chance, if any, of them getting out of it, and then you can start to build it. But also, what are your lows, your weak points? What do you not catch people with? That could allow you to maybe work on that more, or what do you get caught with a lot? So your highs and lows, again, that's important, relevant to that. What you're catching people, what they're catching you, what positions you're getting stuck in, what positions you're keeping people stuck in, how you're, are you getting caught or reversed when you're during transition from position to position? Are you just getting escaped while you actually have the position on the person? Are you getting in a position you can't get out of the position? Journal those things. Those create opportunities for you to produce the perfect homework assignments for yourself to become a great competitor. So that's important. So journaling is going to give you great information about how to fix your workouts and adjust and modify your workouts, your nutrition, your hydration, drilling and rolling, your weaknesses, your strategies, and so on and so forth. So that's this week's element of the BJJ Daily Dozen. I hope you guys appreciated it, and look forward to the next one.
Yeah, I love that. I just, like you said, many coaches will have their own way. A lot of times by journaling, I think the students and the instructors should see what works more, what works less, what they have to work more. I'm going to give you guys just the way that I do, the way that I think. Some of my students sometimes might not know exactly what is in my head, but there's always a plan. So I like to start the jiu-jitsu classes with active range of motion techniques, techniques that will help you warm up and gain some flexibility or resistance to be put in some range of motions that otherwise would be uncomfortable. And even though sometimes we don't have time, or most of the time we don't have time to always finish with the passive range of motion techniques, I think that's something like you said, that Bill Wallace mentioned. It's important to have some maybe stretching routine or how you can unwind routine, doing some flexibility exercises before you go to bed, or maybe after you finish your jiu-jitsu class, so you go a little corner and do your...
Yeah, Professor, just because I love what you're saying, I want to hear the rest from me even. But I was going to say, like, even with that, a lot of people say, well, I don't have time in the evening. I got to spend time with my family. Look, you can, if you're just, say you want some chill time, where you watch the news, you watch TV, you watch your favorite show with your spouse or whoever, sit on the floor and stretch while you're watching it. You can watch TV and be doing it like, say, active range of motion or something. Whatever we don't necessarily have to use the term stretching, but just improving your range of motion. You could be doing those things while you're watching TV, so you kind of maximize your time. You're still spending time, and maybe even get them involved. Hey, this is good for both of us, for our health, our longevity. It's not, flexibility and suppleness. I always tell people, look, when I'm 99 years old, or if I live, Lord willing, I live to be 90 years old or more, I don't care if I can out-grapple some young champion. I don't care if I can win an MMA match, but I do want to be able to get up, walk to the car, walk to the bathroom, not have to be stuck in a bed, go shopping for myself, drive my car, and flexibility in walking, right? If you just keep your body supple, however you do that, and you keep your ability to walk, for practical purposes, that's 99% of what you really need. Not necessarily what you want, but definitely what you need in life to just get by. So at least maintain those things. And if you have a lifestyle where you just kind of integrate, you maximize your time. I'm watching TV, but I'm stretching. That's, just think of ways you can double up on things and maximize your time.
Yeah, I love that idea. Also, I would include some breathing exercises. There are so many techniques.
Yep.
I can talk about that in future events,
That'd
future episodes. I'm a big proponent of breathing exercises, either to relax you, either to get you ready to compete or to train. And so in the gym we favorite the active range of motion techniques, and it's kind of applying opposite resistance to promote what we call reciprocal inhibition. And these are things I learned with Chris Graney, which is one of my black belts. He's a master in biomechanics. The warm-up we try to do every single time with some type of a skill drill, right? So instead of doing sit-ups, we do movements that are definitely going to engage your abs, like, get-ups going forward, or technical stand-ups, or, variations of those. The hip scapes, the hip movement, the bridging, like you said. Things that will help you when you're training, if that case is a grappling. If it's a striking, like you said, like I tell the guys, like, do some shadow boxing, over-exaggerate the movements a little bit, feel the extension, feel the squeezes. At the end of the day, I think one big message for everybody is to try to work in your mindfulness, meaning that try to see how you're breathing, try to feel what is tight, what is not tight. Try to really be. There's so many benefits on that. For instance, if I am shadow boxing and I'm doing, like you're saying, like I'm overextending my arm, and then I can really focus in, maybe when I turn my hand, I feel a little bit of this little pain here, and I move this other way, and it's almost I'm trying to really feel what is happening.
Yep.
I'm trying to feel how I'm gliding through the floor with my feet instead of long steps. Trying to be mindful, because not only that will help you warm up, but also will disconnect you from the outside. And that disconnection from the outside promotes a major mental health, part of the training, because you go to the gym and you have some issue with your spouse or at your work or financial or whatever is causing you anxiety and depression, whatever, say, besides your fighting life, your martial arts life, those things that affect you. But now you're there and you're so focused now in feeling everything that is happening, how you're breathing, if you're having like a shallow breathing or if you're just like too relaxed. And then you get more in tune with yourself, and that gives you a break from life. Conditioning, we don't do anything, at least in our school, with equipment for the most part. What we do when it comes to conditioning, like you said, I'm reading here because I wrote down many things. Yeah. We have two classes that I believe really help my students get conditioned. Even though I think if you're a competitor, you need to do your extra homework. Right. So one is the drills class. The drills class is supposed to be only maybe 2 or 3 drills on that night of a repetition that is most of the time back and forth. We almost don't care about rolling or sparring because there's no breaks. It's just a lot of repetition, just creating that conscious competence. And then we have the competition class. Yeah. In the competition class, I do everything, pretty much all the drills are mostly 5 minutes by 1 minute rest for over a little hour. So meaning that it's like we go whatever drills I'm doing, whatever exercise, if it's fighting for double underhooks, pummeling, if we're like fighting for grips, even whatever, there's so many things we do. Everything is 5 minutes by 1 minute rest. And usually I try to finish whatever drill in 4 minutes, and I add 1 minute of high intensity, say sprinting, just to get heart rates going up. And then you have 1 minute to kind of like maybe through your breathing, just to bring your heart rate down. And there's a huge benefit on that. I always tell my students to not overdo it. Don't get overtrained. Pay attention on your, how you rest, how you eat before you go sleep. So journaling, I think, like you said, is a great way for people to create their own database as far as like, your own statistics, your own numbers. Specific training is a huge thing for me. So many times I do those 30 seconds drills where, like you said, you get somebody, take that back. If it's a jiu-jitsu, you apply a choke. It's not 100% squeezed. The person defending still maybe have one hand controlling. When I say go, you have 30 seconds to finish the person. The other one, mindfully, of course, you don't want to like hurt anybody. Yeah. But and the other guy has 30 seconds to try to escape. Back and forth. It could be close guard. It could be sweep. And I had people criticizing the training, saying, people that left the gym maybe because they were resentful. They were saying like, "Oh, those are not realistic." I'm like, because you know what your opponent is doing, and you know how your opponent how will defend. I'm like, that's exactly why it's efficient.
Well, Professor, not to mention it's actually harder.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
Yeah. If I tell someone, hey, I'm going to come and attack you with a baseball bat, and an hour from now, you just lock your doors or leave, and you won't be there an hour from now. But if I just come in and boom, do it, it's less of a surprise. So the truth is, when someone puts something on you and knows you're going to defend, and it kind of balances things out anyway. If not, it makes it even almost harder because
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I tell them this: like, if you manage to defend, after the submission is so well applied, most likely you're going to defend when this happens, or you're going to be able to see it before. And the same thing is, well, if you manage to apply the technique, even when your opponent knows exactly and fully what you're going to be doing, the chances that you're really going to do really well when you go to a real situation.
Right.
And so studying your opponents when you go compete, we talk about pattern recognition. Those are part of the preparations as well, but not so related to the warm-up. But that's, that's some of the ideas or some of the things that I do. I would emphasize, as far as my own message about that, is to, whenever you're doing your active range of motion or passive range of motion techniques, try to include some breathing exercises for many reasons. One is it helps your lungs naturally. But also it helps you to warm up your diaphragm, for the situation, your intercostal muscles. And Chris, one time, he helped me out one thing. He was telling me like, do your breathing exercises from different positions. For instance, facing up, facing down, because if I'm facing down, my rib cage will have a limit on how far it can go forward or expand or sideways and etc. And lastly, I do believe that strengthening condition outside is very important, like you said. I had, or maybe, again, the way they worked best for me was when I asked Chris, like, Chris, would you help me get into Olympic lifting? And he goes, why do you want to do that? I'm like, I want to get stronger for jiu-jitsu. And he goes, okay, so you are planning on beating your body up in jiu-jitsu practice and beating your body up when you go to the weight room. Is that what you say? I'm like, I didn't think like that. And he goes like, why don't you have your cardio days, and whenever you have your workout days in the weight room, you try to do in a way that it's almost your rehab from all the micro injuries that, sometimes grappling forces on your body.
Right.
So you're still going to get stronger, but you cannot beat yourself. You have to choose. So if you're training for competition and you're really prioritizing, let's say, technique, right? it's one thing. If you're prioritizing in jiu-jitsu, just a super hard training, it's another thing. So having that balance is super important.
Exactly. And that's why even when I was mentioning any of the training outside, like weight training or riding a bike or all that kind of stuff, it was more like I stressed that idea that it was supplemental. In other words, if I don't have access to the gym on a regular basis for whatever reason, I'm away or I don't have training partners, no one's there, no one's available to train with me. There's other things I can do to, that are better than sitting around the couch doing nothing or you know what I mean, or playing chess or checkers. I mean, if you're riding a bike at the gym is going to help your jiu-jitsu more than playing checkers. You know what I mean? Riding, lifting weights, if you're lifting the right. And I also stress that it's sport specific or combat specific. I always say that for reality martial arts, there's what we call combat specific conditioning. For sport, there's sport specific conditioning. And so when you're doing sport specific, you're always factoring in, I'm not just lifting to get big and huge and be able to throw barrels around. I'm thinking like, okay, what can I do to like make my grip stronger? Like my brother Charlie's grip is off the charts, ridiculously. I mean, really one of the probably strongest grips in martial arts, and he's one of the original captains of Crush. Did it like back when Magnus Samuelsson was the world's strongest man. And he's like small guy. He's way smaller than either of us. And I've seen him grab guys. One guy was a UCC champion, and he literally grabbed him, rolling, just crushed his wrist. And the guy was like, tap, tap, tap. He goes, please, man. He goes, you can't grab me like that. I won't grapple with you. He literally didn't want to grapple with Charlie. That's how hard it is. So if someone has that kind of grip in a fight, I mean, it's not, and they grab your throat, grab anything. That's it. You're done. So I do stress that if you can make it sport specific and be rolling and drilling and doing all that, absolutely. But if there's times when there's going to be gaps in that and you realize you're not quite getting enough training, that's where maybe running, riding a bike, being active in general, like you like to go on your hikes and things like that. Believe it or not, that still makes your jiu-jitsu better because you're working on your fitness. Your overall fitness still contributes, maybe not as greatly as drilling arm bars and specific things right like you're going to do in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, of course. But we see it all the time when you see a big, strong guy come into a jiu-jitsu school, and they always do the videos, I said that before online, where they make fun of the guy. Look at the bodybuilder gets beat by the jiu-jitsu guy. But the jiu-jitsu guy's a good black belt who knows a ton of stuff. The bodybuilder knows nothing about jiu-jitsu and still lasts 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. I mean, that's got to say something about being strong. It's got to help. If Ngannou, for instance, went to most jiu-jitsu tournaments, I'm sure he'd do pretty good. I don't think he'd just be getting thrown around and tapped out left and right. I'm not saying he'd win the whole thing, but he'd probably win some of them. And he's arguably not the best. I mean, realistically, not the best jiu-jitsu technician, but he's Ngannou, So I think, take that because sometimes you got to factor those things in. If you're not able to do other stuff, how can you make up for it? Or even if you're, don't have the ability technically, maybe you can maximize and allow your strength. Although jiu-jitsu we would like it to be about technique first and like focus on the technique before everything else. But at the same time, sometimes your attributes are what's going to allow you to beat the person. I mean, there may be jiu-jitsu guys in the world that aren't as strong as you and me, or more technical than us, maybe. But maybe if we were 100 pounds heavier, we might beat them just because of our size. It could be a factor. I'm saying anyway. So that was more my point. But of course, I recommend keeping it more focused on the skill and being specific. So
many times I go to the weight room too, and I do things that especially the pulls, the pushes, and everything. And many times it resembles jiu-jitsu, it resembles some technique. So there's right now at my age, I'm 50 years old. I got a lot of injuries, so I do benefit a lot from doing more rehab in the weight room. But also, I'm not getting ready for competitions now.
Same thing, Yeah.
All right, that was great. So let's see what we have for the preparedness principles for this episode.
Okay, well, I think it's kind of neat because I think this is going to tie in a lot to what we were already talking about. We've seen this common thread of kind of like lining up your conditioning with what you're preparing for, lining up your training for competition with what you're preparing for. We've just seen that we've already kind of brought up what my preparedness principle was in a sense already throughout the whole session today. But what my preparedness principle this week is about having fun by living a practical preparedness lifestyle. And what I mean by that is if you develop practical preparedness hobbies to maximize your time, in other words, create hobbies that are enjoyable and at the same time build functional skills, that's going to help you a lot. So in other words, if you for your hobbies are, like I said, playing chess or you know, whatever. I mean, just some goofy thing that's not going to help you, you know, become a better fighter, reading comic books or things like that. It's not necessarily going to make you a better prepper, right? But if you start doing things that are real specific, like, or you can see how they directly contribute to prepping, you're going to become better at prepping and preparedness. So some people think in terms of more high tech, low tech, or no tech kind of priority, like the primitive skills. Others just want to be as self-reliant as possible in all those areas. Some want to be less dependent on the grid, so others want to be as off the grid as humanly possible. But here are just a few ideas that you can use to kind of like improve your overall preparedness development. So first of all, if you were to just make in general one of your first hobbies, you know, preparedness itself, just prepping itself. So it's prepping in and itself is a functional habit and lifestyle as well as a fun hobby, and it constantly causes you to analyze yourself, your strengths and your weaknesses as a prepper or someone who practices preparedness. You know it as well as I do that you're always saying, I don't have this, or I need this, or I need training in this, or I need to know more about this. It's a constant thing. So, and you're never going to know too much or never going to know it all. There's plenty of guys out there that are into preparedness, or if you want to call it prepping or preparedness, that know in certain things way more than I do, or way more than you do. And there's certain things you know way more than 90% of the people out there. Certain things I might, and that's the other good thing about that iron sharpens iron kind of mentality. When we're talking and communicating with other people, they give us an idea, we give them an idea, and it's like, you know, through that synergy, you just grow and grow and grow and become much more prepared than you were in the first place. Another hobby you could have is just start building a library of books and make these books on practical topics and read the books. Read the books. Even if, the thing about books is books don't run out of power, right? So if the power grid ever goes down, or they're out of power for a long time, there's some, bad situation, you could use the books to learn. You could use the books to make yourself more skilled and valuable. And they also would help to a degree to eliminate some of the boredom that you might not have of having your cell phone all the time to check on everything and watch Twitter or whatever people want to go on, or their TVs or whatever the case may be. So it's a way that you can kind of fight that boredom. So that's just one habit. There's a lot of times different communities and towns will offer like free classes. So you could find preparedness type immersion classes, on candling, hunting, traps and snares, orienteering, first aid, CPR, ham radio courses, which are all things like I've done my, obviously Stop the Bleed and first aid, CPR, AD, ham radio license I got this year. I'm going to be going for my next one, not too distant future, next level, and it's like set goals. That's another thing I want to stress is every year I kind of use our reality camp as kind of my time to kind of set my goals. It's like, that's my new year, so to speak. So I'm like, okay, in the next year, I want to do this. I'm going to make sure I get this done, get my next level of my ham radio license. And I'm kind of planning these things out. So by the time I go to RMA camp next year, I can kind of inform people of the new things I've done to become better when it comes to preparedness. So that's kind of like just the way I kind of stage things or schedule things for myself. So a lot of the classes that are offered by different towns and communities are inexpensive, even a lot of times free, and some of them are taught by really high caliber people, very experienced people. And if a class, even if you have to pay for a class, if it's taught by like a true leader in the field of preparedness or survival or fighting, martial arts or any type of tactical like rape, bill and stuff. They can be well worth it anyway, even if you're paying a large amount of money, because sometimes these courses will save you what you get from going to one course like that. You might not get in going to 20 courses, other courses. So that's something you have to take into consideration as well. We have a course coming up in December. What are the dates of that, Professor?
We're going to have our recycling camp. That will be December 15th to the 17th. We're going to have you come I'm going to announce that probably on the next episode. I want to talk about.
Yeah, and some other great instructors too.
Yeah, we're going to do the grappling. The guys were asking to have this street-specific standing and ground grappling for combatives, unarmed. So we can always address somebody isolating a possible threat, somebody holding a knife or, any kind of blunt object. But the camp will be a recycling camp. We're going to talk about the psychology in education applied to martial arts. We're going to have we're going to talk about these things that I have been developing and trying to study, trying to create formulas for in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and grappling. I mean, Jiu-Jitsu is so open and so intuitive, but I'm trying to create like roadmaps. So that would be mind maps, pretty much. I have an overall mind map design that I have at the school. I have in our library of information. And I will actually get the mind map, which is a very broad mind map to help new people to understand where to go, where do you want to be, where you don't want to be. And in each area, say top game, bottom game, and that's mostly for grappling, how to identify by visually, right, seeing like how your opponent's body is positioned to figure out what technique that would apply better. So
Nice.
the camp will be pretty much all of that. And with you, we're going to do, we're going to go back to the roots. Like I just gave an interview to a girl. She's a jiu-jitsu girl in Europe. She's, I think, from Poland, but she's writing a blog, and she's in Portugal right now. But I was talking to her exactly about how jiu-jitsu originally was gi, no gi, self-defense, those areas. So the camp, the idea is to bring that back. That's why we're going to have gi with its formulas and mind maps, no gi as well. And then we're going to have the street application, the self-defense application. So that would be as real as it gets when it comes to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Love it.
Right.
Love it.
And just one thing, December 11th, for who's listening to this, we're going to have the TECC, the Tactical Emergency Casualty Care.
Oh, yeah.
It's a 6 to 8 hours course at the gym with Chris from Condition Red. So he has a huge experience training military, non-military, civilians, EMTs, and all of that. So he has over, I don't know, maybe over 25 years experience as in the emergency care. So we cover a lot of things. So it's kind of like it's a very comprehensive. Is adding the CPR with stop the bleeding and everything else, and this is the civilian version of the TCCC, the Tactical Combat Casualty Care. So this is for the civilians. And again, it's preparedness.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that is what I was just talking about, right? The type of courses you can take. Some might be free, some you got to pay for, and usually ones you pay for are worth it. Like someone with that type of experience and that kind of background, you're crazy if you don't jump on that opportunity. Unless you're out of town or you're away, or you just absolutely can't be there. You got your daughter's getting married or something. You should be there, because that can be the difference between you're out with a loved one, they get something happened, God forbid, they got stabbed or shot or fell and had some serious injury, and were bleeding out, you didn't know what to do, or some other situation happened, you didn't know how to care for them. And then if they died, what price tag can you put on that? Whether you paid $100, $200, $300, would you pay that much to get them back? You'd pay thousands, millions of dollars and think nothing of it to get them back. So that's the difference, that having that preparedness mindset. Again, people that are prepared aren't scared. That's the big misunderstanding people have, that think of preppers, they're people that are nervous about everything. No, we're not. We're way less nervous about almost anything because we're prepared. We're always thinking, okay, that makes me a little uncomfortable, a little nervous. How do I prepare for that so I'm not? That's how we think. And then we've learned and developed the skill, and we're not worried about it. Like we're like, okay, if it happens, it's not great, but I know what to do. I know how to manage it. That's the difference of the mentality. So something like this is exactly what I was literally talking about in the last point. Now, some of the other things, like when it comes to preparing, so again, I'm thinking about lining your hobbies up with making you a better prepper. In other words, you're sort of tricking yourself into thinking, hey, I'm going out and doing this fun thing or this fun thing. And you're doing something fun. You could do with your significant other, your friends, your buddies, your kids, whatever. And you're doing all these things, and yet there's still the fun element to it. But you're also almost in some sense unknowingly recognizing that you can recognize that you become better at preparedness. Going hiking, right? Lifting weights, doing a fitness class. Again, it's not all about, we're not just relating this to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or kickboxing or MMA. Lifting weights and doing a fitness class, like I said, is better than sitting around doing nothing. And if you get stronger at lifting weights, not everything is about doing jiu-jitsu. A stronger guy who's got good cardio and good strength is going to be able to carry that backpack or that tote or whatever he has to carry to get out of Dodge, throw it in the truck quicker, get his family and lift things and move things or get things off of someone if something fell on them. So we can't always relate personal protection to just what we do in a grappling match or a kickboxing match, and therefore say that being strong or doing this is not valuable. It can be very valuable, but at the same time, like Professor Luigi is saying, we also don't want to do it at the cost of wrecking our body or hurting our body. So if you're physically capable of being really strong and physically capable of being real flexible and having great cardio, that's going to benefit you in more ways than just punching, kicking, and grappling. There's so many other dimensions to that, that's one of the things we can do is just lifting weights, fitness, running, hiking, martial arts, camping, learning about edible medicinal plants, things like that. Developing a food storage where you have your primary pantry for your food, and then you have a prepper pantry where you have backup food for emergency situations, short-term, mid-term, long-term stuff, maybe that goes last 25, 30 years, that you're kind of building that up over time. Make that a hobby. Fishing is a great hobby. Why is it a great hobby? Because not only is it fun, but it's food procurement, right? You're able to produce food by fishing, hunting and trapping, archery, shooting a slingshot, things like that. You could have fun doing these things, but at the same time develop a valuable skill that could be used in a preparedness situation. And don't just think of archery like, we're talking about we're going to be out fighting people in the battlefield like, Walking Dead or something with your. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just for a hunting purpose. If you needed to get food and be able to provide food for your family, and again, an emergency situation. Obviously, we do all those things in the legal way. We get our hunting license, all that when it's possible. I'm talking about in a situation where there's just total chaos and your family's starving to death and nothing's really functioning as it should, and you had to be able to prepare. You could still have an option. Yep. Not that definitely happens, but why not be prepared for it just in case it does? Because we've seen it happen in other countries where there's just total chaos and people run in all different directions and don't know what to do.
Look,
go ahead.
Just very quickly, just to get a hook from what you said. So what happened in Brazil today with the elections yesterday, and it's just a great thing, is a far left candidate won, and the amount of looting and burning of businesses today. It's happening everywhere, especially the many people that voted for this guy. I just saw a video very quick before we started the podcast. They started attacking the big businesses, the big chains of like kind of Costco type of thing in Brazil that gave support to the conservative candidate. Wow. So we never know when a society can decay overnight.
Yep. Right.
And where they were all expecting, say, the voters for the conservative, for Bolsonaro, they would expect that they would do such a thing, but actually it's not true. So the truth is the country went from going through a democratic process that has some things that are questionable to you might find yourself in the middle of a situation like that. So like you said, being prepared for, society, we have some pseudo stability, and we can see how a pandemic can affect us. We can see how war can affect us at any time. It can be overnight.
Yep.
So that's the main reason to be prepared.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with all the sadness of a lot of things that we've seen in the last couple of years, I think that people that are into preparedness and prepping have started to look a lot less crazy to everybody that used to call them crazy a few years ago. Because basically everything that rational preppers, I always say that, I'm not talking about the crazy people, but I'm talking about people that make sense about why they prep and why they're preppers, that they've said has just about happened in the last year. I mean, we literally see just about all of it. I know we covered that in past episodes, so I'm not going to be redundant, but we're seeing this stuff all the time. So this stuff we're talking about makes way, way, way more sense than it ever has before. And I always tell people, look, I don't care if you're talking about MMA. I don't care if you're talking about kickboxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, all that. I love those styles, and those are a regular part of my daily life. However, you can't take anything further than RMA, period, because it involves the jiu-jitsu, the kickboxing, the grappling, the MMA, the preparedness, all those elements, just being as prepared as humanly possible. And if you say that, well, there's just so much to learn, you can never learn it out. Of course, you're absolutely right. So appropriate to yourself, do the best you can, grow little by little. At least you're going to be, if you invest a little bit every day into being more prepared, in 30 years, you're going to be way more prepared than the person who invested nothing every day for 30 years into being prepared. You may not know it all. In fact, you won't know it all, but you're going to be more prepared. And that's a point that's hard to argue. Okay. And again, grappling and punching and kicking doesn't do you any good when you're so dehydrated that you need water. And if you don't get water soon, you're going to die. Doesn't matter how good I grapple or punch or kick. If I need food, doesn't do me any good how good I grapple or punch or kick. There's certain things you need to have, that whether you can grapple or punch or kick or not. And this goes across the board for everybody. So that's why going to this next level, like me and Professor Luigi do, and all of our affiliates and our students do, really takes what we're doing to the next level. And I'm not saying there's other people out there that don't do it. There absolutely are. But I respect that approach because it's the most there's a saying we have in the ICAP our program. It says totality promotes reality. In other words, more total you are, the more totally you kind of consider all factors into what you're doing, the more realistic it's going to be. Totality promotes reality. So getting back to some of my points again, I'm just trying to give you some ideas today about hobbies that you can maybe put your time into. Not that you're going to do all of them. Maybe you can do some. Maybe you will do all of them. I don't know. But doing firearms classes, like me and Professor Luigi both teach, various types of firearms classes. I've done, obviously. Oh, I gotta. We both done various types of programs on, like home firearm safety, basic pistol, personal protection in the home, chief range safety officer. I've done courses at TDI level 1, 2, and 3, Tactical Defense Institute, and all kinds of, and lots of other things. Refuse to be a victim. All these different kind of courses that we've done, and and Professor Luigi teaches courses of both, the USC, both you do USCA and the NRA both.
Yeah, I do the NRA and the USCCA. USCCA has a lot of more, like you said, home defense.
Yep,
and kind of
absolutely.
Like that.
Yeah. I really see strengths in different strengths in both of them, but I think they're both great programs that offer a lot of good stuff. And either way, they're going to give you that foundational element of how to handle the firearm safely. I'm personally one of these people that, as much as I believe in the Second Amendment, I just don't have a problem with people needing to have a basic level of training to own a firearm. I think it just makes sense. Whereas some states you just buy one, you can be a total knucklehead and don't know anything. And you see them with all these bad habits of as far as how they muzzle control and things like that. And they're just like I think that you should, as much as it's a Second Amendment. I just can't find a good argument for saying like people say, well, to drive a car, you got to do a test for your license. Exactly. It makes sense. Would you want people to just get cars and never drive in their life and just start hitting people and going through lights? And of course, it's a balance. It's a balance, but I still think that at least on the basic safety and management handling level, it makes sense. It's hard, or someone doing surgery, a doctor doing surgery doesn't get any training, So.
So in Connecticut, it is required that students have a live practice. Yeah, which I think it makes sense, and I go always beyond what is required because I like my students to have a full, safe experience. So I don't just like check boxes like, okay, take the person and 50 shots and you're done. I don't do that. I rather work with smaller groups, like usually 2 people, and then spend like a good amount of time in the range. When people leave, they're feeling safe, they're feeling more confident. And I tell them, before you buy your first handgun, let's just come with me one day to the range, and sometimes I don't even charge them. I say, like, just buy the ammo, and I'll give you one more training before you buy your firearm. So I think it does make sense. Yeah,
and it's just fantastic what you just said. And again, and that's coming from you and me, who are both extremely pro Second Amendment, but I also realize that you don't want a knucklehead to be, you've got kids. If you got kids and you have daughters, you have kids, you want some moron that doesn't know what they're doing, never handled a gun, just walk around just thinking he can brandish and do whatever he wants. You know what I mean? Being reckless with it, carrying it while he's drinking and doing certain things that just you shouldn't be doing. And that could kill your own child or your own family member or loved one just because they're there. So I think making sure the person understands that it is a responsibility, that it's serious, getting at least a good solid base level of training, and then encouraging them to do more beyond that is a very fair thing for anyone to ask. Regardless of where they stand with Second. I mean that's hard to argue. It's hard to argue at that point. So again, it's one that
just a big thing. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's just one of the things that I do agree with when people make the point about that being required across the board. I think that makes sense.
Well, training, I think I could not imagine myself buying a firearm without having had like some really good training. And another thing is, like, in my classes, I know because I follow the USCCA, the 4 rules of safety. NRA, I think it's 3, but USCCA I really like. But I added the 5th one because they say, like, under me, you guys are going to learn 5 major safety rules. And the 5th one is, like, have a firearm always stored at a safe place inside a safe. Well, if you have kids, it's a no-brainer. You have to. But I tell everybody, sometimes people leave the firearm in the car. I'm just going to go to the store here very quick, come back. If a car gets stolen, your firearm will be there. Or even at home, I think like people should have a safe, or I have different. I'm not going to give details of my security protocols, but the point is, in my house, everything is ready, but also everything is locked.
Yeah.
So if that makes sense. So
yeah,
anyway,
yeah, and even with the NRA, they'll have those couple key ones, but then they do have an expanded version of the safety rules, which is always covered in the courses too, which does go way beyond just those three basic, keep it pointed in a safe direction, keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot, and keep the firearm unloaded until ready to use. But and all those things depending on different situations. But they want to know your target, what's beyond it, know how to use the firearm safely. There's use the correct ammo for the firearm, wear an eye ear protection, not to drink. So they go through a whole laundry list of things that do go way above and beyond, and they're really emphasized. So. But yeah,
Awesome.
I think they just realized that if you keep your finger off the trigger and don't point it at something, and it's unloaded, it's kind of hard for it to do anything beyond that anyway, But like you said, you just don't want someone to I like what you're saying too, storing it, because you don't want someone to get a hold of it and be able to then they could load it, could keep their finger on the trigger, could keep it pointed in an unsafe direction, and then you got a bad situation on your hands.
It could be like a friend of your kids that show up and it's nosy, and it's not like
Exactly.
Again, it could be something you just use your imagination. So
Yeah.
All right, so what do you think? Let's go to the RMA.
I got a couple quick ones last time. Sorry, Professor. I just want to I'll finish so the little things, I'm just giving the hobby ideas, ways to kind of make hobbies and lifestyle habits that will make you a better prepper, but also give you some fun things to do, because part of life is enjoying life, right? You want to spend time with family, friends, kids, and there's things you can do. So we talk about doing firearm classes, going to the range to shoot, not just shooting for, and like I used to like doing the IDPA competition shoots and things like that. That's a lot of fun. You can, but go into the range not to shoot just for self-defense, but it could be hunting, could be recreational competition, just for the enjoyment of it. Making various types of weapons, making weapons, primitive type of weapons or other type of weapons.
Cool.
That could be a fun hobby that you could have. Gardening or farming, that's another one of my things. I have done that a little bit in the past, back when another place that I lived, and I had a smaller garden. But I plan on the coming year. That's the next thing I want to develop, is more of a kind of getting back into that side of things, because we always realize as preppers there's certain little areas of weakness. So that's the next thing I'm going to develop before next year's reality camp, is have some kind of a decent little garden going. It could be knowing things like sewing, knitting, leather work. All these things are skills that could be bartered, but also could be used to repair certain equipment or make things that you need. So as weird as that might seem, like knitting, you may like, knitting, give me a break. But when someone knits a nice blanket and you're freezing, and they give you that knitted blanket, put it over, you're not going to think it's so stupid at that point. So having those kind of skills, especially sewing, is so important, because tents can rip and clothing can rip, and if that stuff's in bad condition, it doesn't work as well for you, and it'll break down quicker. So any of those types of things are important. Making soap, like I know that's one thing. My cousin Kevin and his wife used to make most amazing soaps, and that's something that you need for any number of purposes, like cleaning yourself, cleaning your pots and pans, and cleaning the environment you're in. There's so many purposes and values of soap. Candling, which gives you a way to make lighting. If you don't have powered lighting, you have other ways of making lighting. Raising different types of livestock, chickens, pigs, cattle. One of my students made the most amazing chicken coop, and it's like it kind of like has everything that sort of allows it to run itself and manage. It's amazing. Maybe we'll have them on the show, talk about it sometime.
Yeah.
But that's chickens are valuable in so many different ways. Getting medical training, like we have the course coming up on the 11th, and then we, is 11th, right, Professor?
December 11th.
December 11th, yeah. First aid, CPR, stop the bleed course, first responder courses, doing your own personal study. There's another book in the future I want to talk about when it comes to that. That'll be one of my books of the week. Carpentry and woodworking, mechanical skills. That's like my weakness, but I've been working on it as much as I can in the last few years, getting better at the mechanical side of repairing things, and carpentry and woodworking. But I've done a few things, and I feel like I'm bringing myself up a decent little level, but I've got a long way to go in that area. Gunsmithing, reloading, blacksmithing, ham radio license. Go get your ham radio license. Join a ham radio club. I'm part of the Quabog Valley Ham Radio Club, and we have meetings like once a month, and we learn different things, and they have different events where they put things that you got to find it, and there's all these cool drills they send you out to do. cooking and modern primitive cooking, both modern and primitive type cooking, doing paintball or airsoft, or even wilderness survival skills, high tech, low tech, no tech, bushcraft, primitive survival, building shelters, water craft, firecraft, foraging, trap snares, wilderness, all this stuff in the survival realm. So these are a bunch of things I just kind of listed off to you that can kind of allow you to make your hobbies your training. So your training is your hobby and your hobbies are your training. That's going to make you more prepared, and it's going to kind of maximize your time because you're like, well, I want to have fun. Well, I am having fun and I'm getting good at the same time. So that's my preparedness mentality of the week, Professor.
No, I love it. And so for me, like many people know, I really like hiking, and I hike. I don't use like all this hiking equipment. I hike the way that I walk. So I just, in my backpack, I do try to keep like a good weight, so it works as in my conditioning as well. We do like to have elevation in when we go for hikes, meaning that we like to go up hills because it also provides some conditioning. But I see that as a way to prep as well, just to have those skills, what to carry. I carry like basic survival things like, filtration system for water, but also I like to make fire, and I sometimes, like yesterday, I was a little bit lazy, so I had matches, so I used the matches, but many times I use the M-Tech blades, from Bill Raper, that has the ferro rod, and so it's kind of easy for me to get the sparks going. So I kind of sometimes I go no tech to make fire. Sometimes I just use a match. Sometimes I use a lighter. But those are good hobbies. Another hobby for me is to reload. So I learned how to make my own ammo. And again, I do want to. There's so many all the things you listed is one hobby, right? So every one in the list is one hobby that you can spend some time to develop. I'm really thinking for next year to build a rifle. I have already one, but another rifle for hunting. I was talking to a friend going to North Carolina to go hunt wild boars because there's an epidemic there. So you can hunt and you take the animal to a butcher that puts everything packages for you. I don't have to do it myself, to process myself, which is a great skill to have as well. I was just saying, like, it's my first step is to go and then have some nice pork, send it back.
And maybe in the future we can even, like, different people we know, and that's where that iron sharpens iron thing comes in. Find different people we know that are experts. I know different people. You know different people in any one of those things that we talked about, and have someone come on and just talk about that one thing. Like I mentioned, my buddy who has a chicken coop, he could just talk about how he built it, show pictures of it, and give people, maybe they want to do it, maybe they don't, but that could be a little part of the segment, or maybe someone that does blacksmithing, or maybe someone that does, reloading and things like that, and talk a little bit about that, because that's one thing, like I tell people, you can't know it all, but if you connect yourself to a lot of knowledgeable people and have that team, that really makes a huge difference on how well you grow and mature as a preparedness person or prepper.
100%. I do believe that. All right, so let's go with the warrior mindset, the RMA Warrior Mindset Principles.
Okay. Sure. So today, the principles I'm going to talk about, I'm going to do two, because the first one's kind of short. And the first one I'm going to talk about is just being aware of the types of martial arts. Okay, the types of martial arts. And we have three basic ones we talk about: TMA, XMA, SMA, and RMA. You can say XMA or EMA, either one's fine. TMA means traditional martial arts. And this is a martial art that's oftentimes kind of has a focus of honoring a certain lineage or style or tradition. And they may not change just because they want to keep things the way they've always done. It doesn't mean they don't have some valuable things to offer that can be used in fighting or combat. A lot of them have some very valuable things, but they just keep it that way because that's the way the originally founding master or grandmaster made the system, and they just keep it on that way for generations. Then you have, we call XMA or EMA, which is exhibition martial arts. And this is more like to entertain onlookers or for exercise. it can be really cool to watch. And some of these people are just amazing, way better athletes than almost anybody you're ever going to see. And I do notice some of these guys will come into something like jiu-jitsu, and because of their athleticism can be really good if they get their head focused in the right direction. But it's a lot like gymnastics and acrobatic kind of movements, and kind of cool to watch and fun, but not focus as much on reality. Then you have SMA, which is sport martial arts. And there's different types of sport martial arts, like MMA, kickboxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, judo, wrestling, so on and so forth. They might be fighting on a mat, in a cage, in a ring. But these are the sportive type of martial arts, which can be very valuable in influencing, what we would use in reality. We call reality martial arts. Now, reality martial arts to me goes beyond just what you might call self-defense. Reality martial arts is personal protection and combative arts, but we will use things from, for example, sport martial arts like boxing, kickboxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, wrestling, to develop the toughness in the person's ability to take a shot, to get used to getting thrown, taking up. But we think beyond the rules, though, of the sport. So in other words, if someone says you can't grab a finger and snap it, we're like, okay, that's good to know. And someone says you can't put your thumb in an eye, we're like, oh, that's good to know, because there's got to be a reason you can't do those things. And I always say, if somebody says you can't, I just, that's where I kind of like a little, like an exclamation mark goes off, man. Oh, good. It's good to know that. So it becomes like kind of the strength of the system is that it's I always tell people, like, RMA is everything you see in MMA that's effective and works, and everything you don't see in MMA that's effective and works. Now, I'm not saying it's something that's not effective and works. If it's not in MMA and it doesn't work, it's not RMA. But if it's not in MMA and it does work, it's an RMA. So, for example, could a stick or a knife or a firearm in the hand of another MMA practitioner make them a little more dangerous if they were decided to use it? Of course, and that's how RMA thinks. Not that we're going to always go to that lethal force. We want to avoid an ambush, avert first ambush. Avoid second, ambush third, and then last case scenario, engage in active combat. We have a protocol of doing what's legally and morally right. However, if we get to a certain point where our life is in danger, we don't rule out options that could be effective and could make the difference. So that's really the difference. So just be aware of the type of martial art you're doing and knowing what it's designed for. It doesn't mean that traditional martial arts can't work in the street. Doesn't mean that even maybe some stuff from exhibition martial arts might even work in the street, like a quick kick a guy to the groin or what I mean. You might make it work. It doesn't mean that sport martial arts can't. A lot of sport martial arts can work very well in the street. It's just that RMA takes it to the next level of not really limiting itself by rules and limitations. It could be running away, walking away, could be diffusing, de-escalating, could be using elbows, knees, headbutts, throws, chokes, takedowns, could be using a firearm, edge weapon, impact weapon. And a lot of these things aren't found in some of the other types of martial arts that I just talked about. Bits and pieces of them might be, but not all of them. So we're looking at it from whatever is effective and works, whatever is useful is acceptable, and it will be integrated into RMA. So that's the difference. So just be aware of the type of martial arts you're training. Are you more focused on traditional martial arts, on exhibition martial arts, on sport martial arts, or reality martial arts? And I will say this, I still to this day, to some degree, do a little bit of all of them. Probably the least of the exhibition, but I still work with traditional martial artists because I always find there is what I call it a martial arts connection, a reality connection, even with traditional martial arts. And when I work with guys that I'm doing some traditional things with them just to kind of learn and see, is there something I'm going to find there, that I literally always find something useful. Always. And there's always one little piece or some cool principle or a teaching approach, whatever it might be. And I'm like, that is so valuable. That's going right into RMA. Same thing with sport martial arts. That's valuable. It's going right into RMA. Even the exhibition martial arts, some of the athletic stuff that it can develop into you to make you a better fighter and better athlete, which can translate into helping you perform better, could be useful even to some degree. So that's the four types of martial arts that we're going to talk about.
Would you, the way that I see RMA, instead of just being a system, I see it as a lifestyle.
Yeah.
I see it as because there's no end to it. There's no, like you said, the way that you developed and the way that you have been still developing, even like just the way that you mentioned for your next RMA camp, you want to get better at, knowing how to grow plants and all of that, because that's part of RMA as well.
Yeah.
And I hope like the listener or whoever is watching understands that this is it's a thought exercise for everybody. We're not saying that you should, look for. I'm not saying like, oh, change everything that you do and then you start doing the way that we're telling you to do. It's not that.
Right.
It's just like we're pointing out our lifestyles, how we think. We are trying to give you guys a first person account of how we try to live our lives, and I'm still very behind Walt in many things, but again, because it's a lifestyle, I'm trying to get better at so many different areas. And because we don't just focus, martial arts, it's reality martial arts. It's probably like the biggest part of the RMA, but it's not only that. So it's everything. I feel the way that I see, the way that I absorb for myself is a way for me to be prepared in such a way that I can limit the number of surprises that I can have in life that might take my awareness away and might put me and my family at risk. So that's why for me, RMA is even this next block, the book of the week.
Yeah.
Because the more you study things, for your personal development, is a hobby too. And it doesn't need to be like always books. You can look for articles. You can look for more information about the world, about politics, about philosophy, about psychology, about martial arts, about firearms, about different type of weapons. There's so much to learn. So for me, again, RMA is a lifestyle. Right. It's a never-ending process.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'm thinking maybe I was going to do 2 principles, but we took a little more time on the types of martial arts. Maybe next week I'll do the 70s. I think everybody's going to love the 70s if we do them next week, because it's so related to weapon defense and,
awesome.
and how to defend against weapons. And some people say you can't defend against weapons. It's really not true, but I'll explain to you the procedure, like what you should prioritize. Where most people think of always, if someone has a knife, I have to attack them and defend them, or I have to engage their weapon with my weapon. They have a firearm, I have to use my firearm. They have a knife, I have to use my knife. We're going to kind of get into a process that kind of like an intelligent process that allows you to make the most choice decisions early. And then if things break down, you have what are your subsequent options or contingency plans, all the way down to what we don't want to allow ourselves to do. So I don't want to give away too much, but we'll get into that next week. And I think in our next podcast, and I think you guys will really like that. And I don't care what style of weapon training you do with edge weapon or impact weapon or edge weapon. I'm edge weapon, impact weapon, or firearm. You are going to learn something from this segment that's going to be coming up in our next podcast.
Love it. So, quote of the week. Do you want to go with the quote of the week, and then we finish with the book of the week?
Do the book last? Okay, yeah, sure, Professor. Boy, I'm struggling here between 2 quotes. Am I allowed to do 2, or do I got to do 1?
No, I think last time I did 2.
All right, so I'm going to give my first one kind of like my prepper one, and it's just an ancient proverb, so I don't really know per se who said it, but it says, "Dig the well before you are thirsty." Dig the well before you are thirsty. And that's just such a great prepper mentality. And that goes for anything, right? If you want to be ready for a competition, dig the well before you're thirsty. Don't get to the competition and go, I'm thirsty, and there's no well. Dig the well before you're thirsty. And then my other quote of the week, really relating to RMA, is, "He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight." And that was Sun Tzu.
Nice. Awesome. And mine is actually related to preparedness. It's from Seneca. And it says, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." So it's kind of goes exactly with your first one.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Yeah. So Seneca is... Go ahead.
Go. No, I said I love this because even for us, like as we do these podcasts, we have these little references. It's like I was actually listening to the last podcast because sometimes when you're doing, get and I almost forgot to log on for to do the podcast. It's like I said, because I more listen to a lot of times detail what you're saying and kind of note it because it's harder to do when we're doing them live. But then it's such a good reference and review, and I would recommend that to people in the future. You don't have to just listen to these things once, because this type of it's like there's certain types of information out there that if you study it once, it's never enough. You got to do it again and again and again, and you're going to pick up a little something the next time you didn't pick up the first time. And then also as you evolve and grow as a preparedness person, some of the stuff we said in the first podcast will mean more to you later than it did when you first heard it too. So that's
absolutely. I do the same thing. And I love this quote. So, and then for the book of the week, the first one I always mention, I have mentioned it so many times in my YouTube channel. is The Science of Evil. The name of the book is The Science of Evil from Simon Baron Cohen. I have mentioned this before. Simon Baron Cohen is Sacha Baron Cohen's brother.
Yeah.
And the reason why I always recommend this book, especially for the most naive person, the more compassionate person that doesn't see or don't have an urgency to think about anything related to self-defense. You don't need to know how to fight, but at least like have some awareness, or do not deny the existence of the flawed human. Right. So the book is not religious at all. It's just Simon Baron Cohen is one of the main psychiatrists in UK. He's a very of course is an authority in what he writes in the book. And the book is nothing metaphysical, nothing religious as far as evil, but he defines evil as lack of compassion, lack of empathy, and why some people, no matter what, will never have how to develop that skill of being empathetic or compassionate because of some disorder in the brain. But he breaks down very specific the situations, the conditions. He mentions the areas in the brain responsible for this and that. It's a hard reading. I tell you right now, it's a hard reading because he starts giving examples of terrible things that happened throughout history, but those things are important to be revisited. Now, it's not a book to make anybody pessimist. It's a book for you to understand and to not deny. And I feel like, for me, it's very important as a father and a husband and a son to not deny the dangers of the world. Yeah. So I can have some awareness and I can be prepared to help my family if they need, or my friends and etc. So it's not, I don't want to scare people, but look, I do this exercise myself. I don't like to see graphic videos. I don't like to read, because it's all negative. But at the same time, it's just part of life. And right. And then so I do watch sometimes Discover ID with those investigations. The First 48, it's a great show on, I think, A&E. I do watch self-defense. There are a couple channels on YouTube, police videos, and where they discuss many things when police did right or wrong. Cases of self-defense. I watch. There's a channel called Active Self-Protection. I make my own conclusions many times. I listen to what the person presenting the facts are telling, but I also follow some other channels related to the legal side of self-defense. But anyway, that's my book. I will have better ones. Yeah. I promise, like positive ones. Yeah. But this is the first one for me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And this week, the book I want to talk about is right here. It's On Combat by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He's also, it says, with Lauren Christensen. He's actually a well-known martial artist too. And one of my buddies, Bill, showed me a couple of things from this guy, Christensen. He seems like a sharp guy. Really seems like he has act together and thinks very reality-based. I don't know that I've met him personally. I mean, I've met so many people because I go to a lot of big events and you're meeting this person, that person, but I don't remember that I've ever met him per se. But from what I've seen, he seems like he's got his head in the right place when it comes to the reality side of fighting and martial arts. But this isn't primarily his book. Primarily, it's Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. It's called On Combat. If you want to look up the formal name of the book, it's On Combat by Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, The Psychology and Physiology of Deadly Conflict in War and Peace. So that's the full name. And I read the original book, and he even had an online course that I did, On Combat course. And then, but now I have it on audio too. So it's definitely something that you could read more than one time. Maybe when we get a more subscribers and and more videos up here. We can somehow convince him to come on and do an interview on here.
I
I
would
would love
love
to have him
that.
on.
Yeah.
He's just a
I,
brilliant guy. I mean, it's one of those books, and it's a pretty thick book. I mean, he got like it's I mean, it's not size wise, but
300,
it's almost about 400-page book. So it's not
400
like
pages.
it's not a short book. It's not like super long, but it's like, a lot of books are a couple hundred pages, So it's but it's one of those books you gotta keep reading it. I pretty much read right through it. I just read it, and then I've gone back to it multiple times. Now I have the Audible book, so it's one of those ones I'll mix in between my other Audible books. I'll even listen to another book, then I'll pop that on again. I'll listen to another book, pop that on again. It's just very, very insightful, just amazing information, and so relevant to what we do. About why people freeze in combat and the different things. I mean, it's amazing. I don't want to ruin it, but because it's better that you read it, than I try to explain it.
Absolutely. So what I would do is I'll put a link to those books, probably like you can get easy on Amazon. Yeah. You just mentioned a great thing. For people that are not really into reading, one thing that has been helping me definitely are the audiobooks. So I travel, at least once a month. I travel 6 hours driving to this other job, 6 hours, back and forth. So I can actually almost finish a book in one trip. So I listen for 6 hours, and on the way, and going towards my job on the way back home. And when I feel like I'm drifting away a little bit, I just play some music and then I go back. Yeah. But audiobooks definitely. Nowadays I've been. Yeah. Oh, look, you're taking a. I'm crazy like that. So I'm taking a shower. I got my phone. I place it
with the Bluetooth speaker.
Yeah, the Bluetooth speaker.
I do the same thing when I shower because showering takes time. So, and that's tell people, maximize your time. Exactly. When I'm driving in a car, I very almost seldom ever listen to music ever. I mean, I'm almost always got some instructional, but I know what you're saying. Sometimes if you get a little off focus, you do something to distract you, put something a little checks it, or I'll switch the topic or whatever the case may be. But I'm the same way. I have it literally right in there, my Bluetooth speaker. I just put it on. It's right. It's so loud. Now I'm showering. I'm listening to a book or listening to a lesson while I'm showering. Instead of just showering, you're maximizing your time.
Silva does the same thing when she's cooking, when I'm cooking. Sometimes she's doing something. It's a great way to customize, and so take advantage of technology and use audiobooks. And I think that was an amazing episode. So much information.
Can I just say one thing real quick, Professor? And maybe it's something we can add as another topic if you're okay with it in the future. I just want to mention a couple things. Like maybe we could talk in the future about mentioning quick some people in the martial arts that we sort of look up to or might have influenced us or impacted us. And of course, you're one of the ones for me in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But I want to say with RMA, a couple guys that I really recommend people check out. Of course, my dad and she and Charlie are amazing, but they're kind of lone wolves. They're kind of like really private people. That's just their personality. And, my dad's the type that could probably live out in a cave in the woods and could care less, just like this person. But Tony Blauer, he's just an absolute genius. What a brilliant guy. He's got so much information to offer. I mean, me and him, we're still good friends. And I just popped on one of his podcasts the other day, and he's like, "What? Walt's on here? Oh my goodness." He was like all excited, but as he's just and I don't say this to blow smoke or to overly, it's just, he really is one of those guys that's so smart and so underappreciated. Yes, he has a good following, but as far as I'm concerned, he should have a much bigger following, and people should really recognize the brilliance behind his research and the information that he has. So he's another guy I'm just so, and of course, Richard Ryan, who is my partner, and I get. And the funny thing with the two of them, they're so similar. I don't even know how much they even haven't had a lot of personal interaction with each other. But by being around both of them, the way they both think, the way they kind of, like you said, there's going to always be similarities if your focus is on the same type of thing. But they're just both brilliant reality martial artists, and I think have so much to offer in terms of practical, personal and interpersonal protection. So I would recommend any chance you get, check out Tony Blauer, check out Richard Ryan, any of their stuff, and you're gonna pick up a lot of stuff. And there'll be other people I might mention in the future. Maybe the same thing, Professor Luigi. And they don't always have to be reality martial arts. Sometimes they're traditional. Sometimes they can be from any number of different areas. But I think that's an important thing,
Yeah,
and
I
just
love
for us,
that.
it gives us a chance to give, maybe you want to mention one of your teachers or someone how they've influenced you to either today or next time. I think that's important to people to see that.
Yeah, no, I think I love the idea because there's so many amazing people in the martial arts world. And like we mentioned before, when you talk to these grandmasters and these visionaries, you're going to see universals. You're going to see them saying things differently, but they mean the same thing. They already like this. They have that self-discover process that I think we all go through when we become teachers and coaches. And a lot of times we think like, oh, I came up with that. But then you hear somebody else is saying it too. I'm like, I have no ego. I don't want to trademark any thought. But somebody said that, especially when it comes to jiu-jitsu, they said, I forgot who said that. And I should give credit, but I will research it and then hopefully I'll find who said it. He said, like, nobody invents anything in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You just rediscover because at the end of the day, it's all biomechanics and, you know, it's physics. But we give credit to the people that, of course, managed to develop and all of that. But I do have people to mention, but I'll start on the next episode. So we finish on the 90 minutes mark here. And everyone, please send your comments, send your you know, feedback, your input. Subscribe, share. We are doing this. We investing. We're not looking to be influencers, anything like that. It's just I think we can help our community. When we had the idea of having the podcast, we thought like, well, was my selfish way to spend more time with my coach. So having you, you know, so it's like, you know, because we always trying to meet each other at least every month, but life gets in the way. And this way we make our meetings public because.
And then just real quick say, I know every week you're so gracious in saying that you're your mentor and all this stuff, but you are my mentor too. So that's, I think we're both at a higher level at what we've done. We've been doing this stuff a long time, and we both, I've grown a lot by interacting and working and training with you, and our relationship as far as martial arts. And I think it's worked both ways, and that's what it should be. It should be about, you know, reciprocating. You. It's not just about taking; it's about giving. So there's a contribution both ways. You give to me, I give to you. We both make each other better people for it. So you know, and I, you know. Just want people to realize that too, that he's my professor, my mentor, teacher in many ways too. So,
no, I appreciate it. I think this is great. There's one more thing people ask me like, oh, you already do so many things, like, you know, same thing with you, and you just started a new podcast. I'm like, yes, because again, it's all about giving back to the community. So you know, but anyway, thanks so much again. Send your comments, share. I will put the link to the books so you guys can. It's easy to follow. We're gonna keep putting the links for our emails and our locations if you guys ever want to come check us out. And if you're also a martial arts coach, we know so many great guys, and you want to come in, let us know. And this is super easy to set up. You don't need to come. We're gonna eventually set up a studio, physical studio, but right now we're just using you know, a different platform, different than Zoom, so we can have better image. But we're making investments with better cameras, better microphones, and kind of things like that. And let's see where we go with this. Thanks so much again, Shihan. I really, really appreciate it. See you guys next week.